Welcome to Minerva. Today we're going to be discussing the question, what is Freemasonry? First of all, I'd like to introduce my co-host, Duncan.
Hello.
We hope to give you enough information that you can then go away and do your own study. And of course, in Freemasonry, there's plenty of study to do. We also know that lots of the people that watch this are actually Freemasons. So what we would love you to do is in the comments below, if you can leave your lodge name and where you're from, just so that everybody can see how wide the fraternity is. And I think it'd be great fun for us to go through and see
it'd be great.
Where people are coming from and what other lodges are watching us, I suppose. So look, let's get into this. Really, really simple. Is Freemasonry just a boys' club?
Okay then. Well, let's just deal with the first bit. Is it just for boys? Is it just a man's club? As we both know, there's. It seems weird to call female fraternities because, of course, fraternity is brother. But and we know that there's co-masonry. I know we both have no issue with either of those. But for the Freemasonry that both you and I are in, and the more standardized and recognizable version of Freemasonry, is it just a boys' club? In essence, I'd have to say yes, if you take that phrase in the same way as the Scout movement is a boys' club. But but neither is the Scouts just a boys' club. Neither is Freemasonry just a boys' club. You can enjoy it in the same sort of way because you have the camaraderie, etc., and you have the friendships that develop through it. But it is far more than just a boys' club. Or it offers itself to be more than a boys' club. Okay,
so then, being a protagonist, right? There are lots of different societies out there. You could join a golf club or a football or rugby club, right? You can meet in other communities like churches or all different religious bodies. You can meet up with people to paint Warhammer toys. We see that up and down the high streets in England. And so what is it that makes Freemasonry different from those other societies?
I suppose for me, from the perspective, it is, I noticed you did mention some theological concepts. But for me, the difference with Freemasonry is that its underlying value, whether you take it from a literal reading of things like its literature or just from actually visiting a lodge, it is its dedication to teaching and not enforcing, that's too strong a word, progressing, supporting concepts of moral and virtuous behavior. And I suppose that's the thing. It's not a case of it instills it. It's not when you become a Mason, you're actually seen as being particularly moral or particularly virtuous. It is a case of it's presented as these are the ideals and these are the ways that you want to behave. We want you to behave. And that for me is the part that sets it aside from any organization.
So one of the things that I often hear, and I know that you've heard this, we've had this discussion many times, is when people are pitching Freemasonry to other people who are non-Freemasons, they'll say, oh, well, Freemasonry is different things to different people.
Yeah.
You'll often hear that. And one of the things that I would say, the USP or the unique selling point of Freemasonry is its ritual, its ceremonies. They're the thing that sets it apart from all of these other societies.
Yes, and I mean, again, we can talk about the theological sides because so many religions have a ritual within it. Yeah. But normally from a congregational part, or you are a single participant within it, which is, again, not too dissimilar to Freemasonry. But of course, Freemasonry categorically is not a religion. It is. But again, I would take that back as the point I was saying, that it is through these rituals, and by ritual, I think that's a good part of the phrase, isn't it? Because the ritual is, I remember somebody explaining, it might have been you or somebody saying, you have the ritual, which is almost like you have a ceremony, the word ceremony, you have the word ritual. Okay. Ceremony is the actual written process. That is the thing, you describe the ceremony. What you experience from it is what we would term the ritual, in the sense of what it was actually purposed to do. And that, I say, is unique to Freemasonry because it's beyond, although we do have, we use theological rhetoric. You know, we do refer to supreme beings, etc. But it is normally as a vehicle to talk about morality and virtue.
Yeah, no, that's one of the important things, actually. To be a Freemason, you need to have a belief in a supreme being. But essentially, that's reasonably wide. That is, a belief in something else, a higher power of some description. Yeah. But it's never said to be a specific God or a specific thing, and that's for the participant to understand. And going back to the rituals and ceremonies thing, I think that's fascinating because, the way that I understand the difference between the two is that a ceremony is something that is often done with a number of people. A ritual is something you can do on your own. And we call the ritual, we call what we do a ritual within Freemasonry, but externally we tend to refer to it as a ceremony. And I think it is both. And I think, the way that you receive the ritual is on your own. It's for you, and you're doing it in that sense when you're brought into Freemasonry and you're initiated. It's for you, so it does become personal, almost singular. But it is a ceremony because there are lots of people there doing it, and I think that's a really interesting part of Freemasonry. One of the things that I'd love to get to is that people that are clicking on this video, would have seen the title, What is Freemasonry? And they may want to hear about the Illuminati, who killed JFK, and all of the other weird conspiracies. We should do, really. Yeah, we should. We've done that stuff in the past, but I think it's probably a good time now for us to say, is there any basis in a lot of these big conspiracy theories that are out there?
It's simple. No. Absolutely not. It's, you and I, we're friends over this, and maybe part of our friendship is because of how we emotionally take on this. And we both know Masons, both experienced ones who've been in for decades, who are so, when they see these things come up, the hiatus that they have, what's happening going on? But Freemasonry has been subjected to conspiracy theories for literally centuries. We've got, I think there's newspaper cuttings from around the 1800s or even 1700s saying about anti-Freemasonry activity. Primarily is because, the most common argument that comes forward, and I think it underpins all conspiracy theories, is because you can, the only reason you would do something in secret is because you're doing something bad. If not, you would do it openly. But we know the only reason we do things in secret is because, as we say, I've never mentioned it 2 times. I don't want to overemphasize it, but we do the rituals and we do these things we do have oaths, and these oaths are normally about, are you really going to take on the vows? Are you really going to try and prove yourself? And we get challenged on our integrity. How valuable is our word of honor? And so we have a very simple test by going, okay, you say you're going to do it. I'll tell you what, I'm going to give you a secret handshake. I'm going to give you a secret password, and you can't tell anybody. That's your challenge. And so that's the first test of our integrity. Can we do it? Can we keep our word? But of course, if we did a public ceremony of giving the handshake and the password, then there's no challenge. There's no test of integrity because everybody knows it. And that's the reason we do it in secret. Well, to me, that's the most primary reason that we do it.
And it makes a lot of sense. There are over 6 million, I believe, Freemasons on the planet. And to keep anything secret from, within 6 million people, there would obviously be some sort of leak. The other thing that's thrown at Freemasonry, and we hear this all the time, is that, well, you wouldn't know because you're not a high enough degree.
Yeah.
And I find that fascinating, first of all, because we come from an English Freemasonry system where higher degrees don't really count in the same way they do in other systems like in America, etc. But also externally, people look at Freemasonry and they hear that there are 33 degrees, and instantly in their mind they feel that they're linear.
Yes.
Whereas in the system that we're in England, they're not. You join craft Freemasonry, which is 3 degrees, and then all of the other bodies are external, so you can join them almost independently.
Yeah.
So there are, 30 plus, probably more than that, other orders that you can join, all with different degree systems within them. So there's no way of knowing who's who and how high people are. And obviously in England, you'll have different people in different orders as well. So some will join some because they like that type of Freemasonry. Others will join others because they like that type. There is a rank system that most Freemasons don't understand very well. I don't understand it particularly well. And I've always wondered why the conspiracy theorists haven't grabbed onto that.
That's because nobody can explain it. That's what. That is the big secret of Freemasonry, the English ranking system. But yeah.
Yeah, but I think, we've been going for over 300 years, and if we're trying to do something nefarious that's taking over the world or some sort of global domination, we're just doing a terrible job.
We must be. I mean, for 300 years, we still haven't taken over the world with now 6
million or whatever.
6 million, and we still can't do it. It's hopeless. It really is a bad thing. But yeah, it's, people describe Freemasonry in books and so easy in films, and I can understand because you've got a storyline to give out.
Yes.
Either whether you're doing a fictional story or writing a conspiracy theory, which is fiction in its own right. But yeah, we talk about Freemasonry being universal, and you hear it being described as being universal, which what really means is a case of the essence of Freemasonry is universal. The concept of brotherly love, which would be a lovely topic to get into. But it is different. I mean, under the United Grand Lodge of England, whose history dates back to being believed to be the oldest Grand Lodge in the world, we have a defined description of what Freemasonry is. Consists of only entered apprentice, fellow craft, and master mason with the support of the Holy Royal Arch, and that's it, and no more. It literally says, and no more. And so for us, our pinnacle, Holy Royal Arch, we're done. But if you go over to America and do the Scottish Rite, then yes, you have 33 degrees. Again, still classed as Freemasonry. So unfortunately, the conspiracy theorists don't quite unify their ideas too well.
No, and as we always say to people, watch this and then go away and do your own study. And I think people that are into the conspiracy theory part of it, which I do still find quite fascinating, that is the part to go and look at, is to really dive deep into how Freemasonry works.
Yeah.
Don't try and view it from outside in that sense of looking at it as a body with these kind of concentric circles in it, because that's just not how it works.
But then again, we're not high enough to know.
We wouldn't be high enough to know. Let's move on to the sort of values of Freemasonry, because I think this is where we've got some real importance. The traditional values of faith, hope, and charity, and those are things that have perpetuated through Freemasonry for many, many years. More recently, the United Grand Lodge of England, who are essentially the umbrella for all of the other Grand Lodges. The United Grand Lodge of England say that the current values of Freemasonry are integrity, respect, charity, and friendship. I quite like those values, and I think they suit us. And the question I've got to ask you, I suppose, first of all, is how do you feel about them? But secondly, more importantly, is do Freemasons use those values?
Right. Okay. Do I agree with them? Well, I'm such a traditionalist, and it's hard for me to hear the things change. Faith, hope, and charity has been around for Freemasonry for centuries, and I can understand in modern rhetoric that to really appreciate what they stand for is not, it takes a little bit more of looking into. It's not words that you would instantly find recognizable. And so reluctantly, I have to accept the practical thing of actually changing it to, if nothing else, a modern language, words that will resonate with the modern society. And so that's my feeling on the change of them. But actually to the questions of do we live by them, I suppose that's the point. I mean, it's very important to clarify that's the question. Do we live by them? Because that's what underpins what Freemasonry is. Not that we see ourselves as being more, if we're looking at friendship, we're looking more focused at charity, we're looking at integrity. We see ourselves as that. These are ideals. These are the way of life that we've taken an oath to try and achieve, to understand what these are and what as a code of conduct is to live by. I suppose the hardest one I have within them is friendship.
Yeah.
Only because it says, I'm not saying I'm anti-friendship at all, but it's only because, of course, of what, if you have the other three, and it's because of what we both describe of our experiences within Freemasonry, the friendship part is a byproduct. If you adhere to the other three, you naturally have these friendships that actually last. And I've got friends around the world now because of Freemasonry. Not because I follow because I follow the ideals. It's just because of what Freemasonry is. It feels to me more like a tagline for a marketing campaign of bringing people in. If you're a bit lonely, come and join Freemasonry. It's a friendship sort of thing. Plus, I love the concept of three. We have faith, hope, and charity. To have three again, to have four is like, we're just adding them. Yeah.
I do agree. I like three. I think the friendship thing's really interesting because Freemasonry is incredibly social.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the friendship comes in. Again, words and semantics. We get into this all the time. And charities, is the one that is in both, right?
Yes.
And I think that's interesting because actually the word charity, I think, has changed a lot since the original usage.
Yeah.
Because we now read charity as almost check writing, giving to good causes. That isn't how it's intended in Freemasonry. It is intended in that way, but that's a very small part of what charity means to us. Because charity also means giving your time, your love, your expertise, and helping other people. Not necessarily in a financial way, but just being there for each other.
Well, that's it. I mean, it's faith, hope, and charity. They're concepts of classical virtues. And so the virtue of charity isn't just giving money, which is, again, if we're looking to the concept of historically, that was one of the points. I remember reading stuff about like the 1800s where you had such a wealth divide between the poor and the rich. There's an argument saying like how philanthropic Freemasons were during the Victorian periods, where, to be honest, we would challenge that because the difference was so great that what they gave away was huge in comparison to the poor, but was minute in what they actually give. So where we look as Freemasons as our challenge to be charitable is not just to give, but to understand what could you have given. Have you really challenged yourself to be charitable, or is it a case of you're just throwing it away because it is surplus? It's not just about give away surplus. It's to give for giving.
Yeah, and again, understanding these words is a big part of it. And there are good descriptions on the UGLE website if people want to go and have a look at that. It's a really good place to find them. Good plug, yeah. Do Freemasons use these? I really think they do. For me, I think they, most Freemasons, and of course in a society of this size, you're going to find good, you're going to find bad. That's natural. However, in the main, generally, I believe that most Freemasons I meet do actually understand the virtues, do understand what we should be doing, and do start to live by these values. We're going to move it on now because we're going to get to a subject which I know that you love and we love arguing about. Is talking about what is Freemasonry and trying to grapple as to give people an idea in their minds as to what happens when we're practicing Freemasonry, if you want to call it that.
Right.
Is Freemasonry esoteric?
Oh, here we go. Right, okay, yeah.
So, I'll give the definition, which is intended for or likely to be understood by a small number of people who specialise in their knowledge, essentially. Okay. And to me, that really explains and really sits nicely with me as to what Freemasonry is.
Okay, my turn.
Go.
I won't roll up my sleeves. We'll make it a nice fight. I suppose the challenge I have is the case of, so we were hinting at it before, our cultural understanding of words changes.
Yes.
And I would be cautious about using, I wouldn't use it from even a historical point, but I think it's a precarious word to use. There are orders within Freemasonry that you're a member of that I'm not, that I would say are more esoterically inclined, because they'll go into what I would say is a modern understanding of the word, where you're looking at something more spiritual. You are looking at, I'm not saying that Freemason isn't spiritual, but I'm looking beyond your normal definitions of faith and understanding, where, and so that is what I would call esoteric.
People, I suppose, watching this may understand that as more occult, more magical, spiritual is another good word. So yes, I think that's where this difference between us comes sometimes, is that, weirdly, I'm involved in those a bit more, but actually I don't necessarily see that, I see esoteric as a broader topic, but this is where we get into the word of it.
This is where we start breaking it down, because I remember so you were saying that you see it as esoteric because there is an underlying message within Freemasonry that will make someone, like you were saying, it will make someone become more honourable or more charitable. So therefore, they are drawing an esoteric value from it. I disagree with that interpretation due to the fact that it's about a piece of knowledge that is obscured, where somebody else also has a piece of knowledge which allows them to understand it. And that's not what I see Freemasonry as. Freemasonry is far more broader than the sense of virtually anyone become a Mason. They are with the categories that we have, essentially, you must believe a supreme, and to be of a good character, to at least have the framework. And that's mostly from the concept of, if you are a good person, normally is one who understands there's room for improvement.
That's true.
That's it.
True.
And so anybody can learn from Freemasonry. So it's not a select group. The only time it becomes a select is when you become a Freemason itself. So therefore, it's not select because you've got full exposure to it. And so I'm cautious about saying that. But do I say that Freemasonry doesn't have a hidden message? It does, but not in such a conspiratorial-like fashion. It is a case of, we're going to have to at some point get on the lovely conversation of allegory.
We will. And let's do that now. So,
all right then.
The ritual defines Freemasonry in a certain way.
The English version is normally Freemasonry is a peculiar system of morality veiled in allegory, illustrated by symbols. There's slight variances around the world, but that's generally it.
So that's the elevator pitch of Freemasonry. And we always laugh about this because if we were to say we had a friend that we felt would be a good Freemason, we wanted to bring them into to the society, and they asked, well, what is it? Tell me, just give me the nitty gritty. If we were to say that to them...
To be honest, it's the weirdest thing because it is technically the only phrase within English Freemason that says, what is Freemason? And we're actually asked, what is Freemasonry? And the answer we're meant to give is this.
Is that?
But you wouldn't go into the street and say, so what's Freemasonry? It is a peculiar system of morality. It's surreal. But this is my point. It is a case of, it's peculiar to us now, because we see it as a very Masonic-like phrase, that only in Freemasonry we would use these terms. But when this actual statement came into our rituals, or it came into Masonic rhetoric, which was around about the late 1700s, at that time, even people at grammar school would have actually been taught the sense that you would have been taught what morality veiled in allegory actually was. It's a very simple basic part of literature or even art. Aesop fables are morality veiled in allegory, illustrated by symbols. And as we know, so like take an Aesop story, the famous one, the tortoise and the hare. We all know it. We also know that we say it to children because it has a moral lesson underneath. So patience is a virtue, and don't be boastful about your actions because of comeuppance. But we know it's there, but what we don't actually acknowledge is that, well, that's actually allegory. This is a case of, we have a lovely story about a rabbit and hare, which is enchanting.
Yes.
We say it because it has a moral lesson that we're trying to teach our children. And because we're teaching by using a story, that is called allegory. And so it's as simple as that. And as we know in Freemasonry, if we talk about craft masonry, we have generally 3 specific rituals. Yep. Which is, so really, if you step back, the actual rituals themselves, we're pretending to be a guy joining a stonemason's guild.
Yeah.
We then go to a ceremony which says, well done, you're now having your exams, if you're going to be a competent stonemason. And eventually you become someone who's in charge of stonemasons. And that's the story, that's the literal story. The allegorical value is something we're told what that is meant to represent, what 3 stages it is. And once we understand that story just explodes. It's lovely.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot to be said for the allegorical part of Freemasonry, and also a lot to be said for people trying to understand it within the fraternity now as well, because we know that there are things that are lost on some people who join, and there are big efforts to try and help those people that are joining now to understand what Freemasonry really is. And hopefully this video is part of that as well. Okay, so let's move on to another subject, which is, what is the purpose of Freemasonry? Hopefully people watching this have heard about what we think Freemasonry is, but we haven't spoken much about the purpose or why we do it. So the best question I think to put to you really is, why do you do it?
Why do I do? Right, okay. I do it because I like it. Because it's, I suppose it goes back to the very first. It was actually the very first day on my initiation when I became a Freemason. I had expectations, and they were far more down the. I'm joining this historical society and this lovely old rituals, all that sort of part. The thing that blew me away, absolutely, I was not prepared for, was I read so many books about this thing called a fraternity and this brotherhood, and everyone called themselves brother. And it seems it was a nice thing. It's not like a kind of a value sort of thing, of a history sort of value. I didn't understand, or certainly didn't expect how real that concept was, that Masons somehow instinctively, and I think it's one of the things that's perpetuated, because we do things the same again, and because the goodwill that happens within a lodge, that there is this friendship of brotherhood is extreme. It was amazing, the first experience. I've never been in the services. I've never been in very male-oriented groups of things. So to be in this environment where genuinely, and I think it's the hardest thing for a Mason to describe to a non-Mason, because it sounds so flowery, it sounds so unbelievable, that it's hard to convey unless you become a Freemason and you're suddenly in this room with all these men, different backgrounds, different ages, different temperaments, just being kind to each other. It is absolutely phenomenal. I remember, just to put another twist on that, I love the history side of it. I'm passionate about the ritual. I even went back to university to study more of literature so I could understand more of it. And I remember one day I was going to the lodge, and this other guy around about my age, and I went up to the bar afterwards and we were getting some drinks, and he realised I tapped my pockets, I forgot to bring my wallet. And the guy said, "Oh, you forgot your wallet?" I said, yeah. I was so embarrassed because, there was drinks and stuff to pay for. He just instantly took out, I think it was like 30 quid, and he said, no, you just pay me back. Didn't know me from Adam. I think we have never met before, but I was going to become a member of the lodge. And anyway, obviously next time I go, gave me his 20 quid. Obviously, just because we're at the same lodge, we pass, etc. And then one day he turned around and said, you're an exceptional Mason. You are a Mason, simply because I enjoy doing the ritual and I can explain it. It was lovely to explain to him. He said, no, you're a Mason. Because I can tell you what the words mean, but you instantly saw another human being who you didn't know was in an embarrassing situation. You had no hesitation. You went in, you gave a stranger money on the faith and integrity that, not even thinking about, will I get this back? You just did it. Trying to explain to him that no matter if you got someone like me who could tell you what it meant, the real Masonry and why you do it, or why I do it, is because there's people like him. And that's what Freemasonry is.
Yeah, and I think for me, the purpose of Freemasonry, the system seems set up to keep perpetuating these rituals, to keep doing them and continue that tradition. And I think the reason for that is that tradition and those rituals hold some real universal truths, some things that are the same today. The values are the same today as they were 300 years ago. But the purpose is almost the application, and it's what you're talking about, the application of those values. It's seeing people start to apply those values, not just to their Freemasonry, but also in general to their lives. Which
I would like to, there was something you said earlier where we were discussing the sense of ceremony and ritual, and the ritual about the individual. And you're right, every ritual we have is about a candidate or candidates advancing through. But when you do the ritual, although it is structured by rhetoric for that person, a lot of Masons are sitting watching it. And it is the same way. It is so beautifully written. It's almost, and I mean, one of the weirdest things that when you become you've been a Freemason for several decades, you realise that you watch the same 3 to 4 rituals for the next decades of your life. And if you're with one lodge, the words don't change. But the reason we do it is because they are so beautifully written that one day you'll be sitting there, you're hearing the same thing you have heard for 10 years, and somebody just says it slightly different, and it makes you re-evaluate what he said, and it clicks. It's like when you hear a song and you suddenly get the lyrics, you go, wow, I get that, and you start having an affinity with that song.
Yeah.
And that's what I think about the Freemasons rituals. Yes, it is for the candidate, but it is equally, they are so intricate and beautiful that it is for everybody within that room, because you can never know too much about it.
No, I'd agree with that. And I think, wonderfully, we've come full circle here, encompassing everything that we've sort of spoken about in what this purpose of Freemasonry is. And the other thing that I think we could talk about is the purpose of Freemasonry linking to the origins of Freemasonry.
Oh,
however, I think that's probably a topic for another time. But if people want to see us talk about the origins of Freemasonry, I can imagine there might be a bit of a spark there.
Oh yeah, there would be.
Please do leave that in the comments, and please do like this video as well if you've enjoyed it. It really does help spread the video a bit wider for us. So we hope that you've enjoyed this video about the what is Freemasonry and a topic that we're passionate about. And we do hope that you subscribe to the channel, and we look forward to seeing you again very soon.